Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard. I'm John, and today I'll be continuing my top 30 games of all time list, games number 25 through 21. Now, if you couldn't tell, I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan. Always have been since I was pretty little, and I've got the books, I've got models, I've got posters. I've been really involved in the lore, so it was inevitable that at some point a Star Wars game would end up on this list. And there might be multiple, who knows? But at number 25, I've actually got Star Wars Outer Rim by FFG. The gist of Star Wars Outer Rim is that you're a smuggler or bounty hunter, kind of living out on the fringes of the galaxy, and you're trying to make a name for yourself. The objective of this game, then, of course, is to get up to 8 to 10 fame points. To earn these fame points, you do things like completing jobs, tracking down and collecting bounties, transporting illicit goods from planet to planet while avoiding, Imperial or Rebel patrols. Or other ways to make fame are just through, kind of common events that happen as you travel through the Outer Rim, getting into combat with some of the various factions out in this part of the galaxy, or just by upgrading your ship, becoming just, someone that stands out and is more well known. And I think this game really does a good job with that theme and making it work. The other cool thing I really like about this is that it's kind of an RPG-like game, and although the characters included in the box are like Boba Fett, Han Solo, Lando, Jyn Erso, you don't necessarily have to play the characters as they are in the official Star Wars lore. You could be Boba Fett, and his special abilities are tailored more to going out and doing collecting bounties and bringing them back to whoever hired you. But you can make a Boba Fett that ends up being a smuggler, or ends up allied with the Rebel Alliance. I mean, really, you can make anything in this game that you want. You don't even have to buy the ships that are associated with these characters. Everyone starts out with like a base freighter or kind of assault fighter, and from there you're traveling to these various starports, and of course you can buy like a fire spray assault frigate, and then eventually earn enough fame that you can transform it into the Slave One and really feel like that RPG element of becoming Boba Fett and how he rose to fame. The other mechanics of this game I really like is as you're traveling from planet to planet or just out in space, it kind of takes the theme from like Dead of Winter, where depending on the different space you land on, you draw pretty much like a story card, and based on the skills or equipment that you have on your character or your ship, the outcome of that event can vary wildly, either giving you, positive boons, or if you can't pass that test, some negatives that kind of just take away money or equipment for that turn. Overall, Star Wars Outer Rim, really strong game for its RPG elements, and I think it's got a really tight gameplay to get a character up that max fame. And it's a game as a Star Wars fan that I really do enjoy playing, even if there's not a ton of replayability there, but I've had fun every time I've played it. So there you have it, number 25, Star Wars Outer Rim. Coming in at number 24 is Broom Service. Now this is a game I actually haven't played in a long time, but ever since Corey brought this to the table, I've really had a good time every time I've played it. This game is all based around crafting potions and gaining resources that you then bring to different locations on the board as you move your 2 witch tokens around. Essentially, the further you get away from the starting areas, the more points you're going to get if you can deliver, the associated color potions to whoever needs them. This game also has a really cool mechanic of having a deck of 10 cards that each turn you pick 4 of them, place them face down, and that is your essentially hand for the turn. Now, to even build further upon this, what happens is going around in the turn order, the first player is going to play a card, And now you have the option of using that card in its brave or cowardly form. Now, the brave form has way better rewards. And that's really how you're going to maximize your resources in this game. But if you're the first person to play brave, and someone behind you also wants to take the brave action on that card, and does so, you get nothing out of that card. Whereas, let's say you would have taken the cowardly version. It's subpar, it's still decent, but a lot of the time that's really not what you're looking for. But at least if someone else had that card in their hand and wants to use it, whether they use it as cowardly or brave, you are going to get that action, even if it isn't that awesome, more robust brave action. So there's really a lot of risk reward in this game, and I really like that, because as first player you get down to those last couple of abilities that you really want to use, and you almost have to go for the brave action and hope that, out of the 10 cards that everyone else picked, they didn't pick that card. And I think that adds like a really good amount of tension to the game. And sometimes people can be nice and maybe they didn't need the brave action and just go with the cowardly, even though they could have really hurt your turn by also choosing to do the brave action. I think that's a really strong element of this game. Another focal point of this game is going around earning points through zapping away these clouds that are kind of out over parts of the map or the board. These cloud tokens that you're zapping away, I think, are a really good way to kind of maximize the amount of resources you're getting that you're then using to turn into the towers for endgame points, while also providing, obviously, some points that you can earn throughout the game. I think that's another cool thing they really did, and having resources outside of just the potions that you're crafting and delivering is really cool, and another bright spot of this game. And there you have it. That's Broom Service, a great game, and I think is pretty player friendly and pretty easy to learn. So if you haven't played it, definitely check it out. Alright, and coming in at 23 is another RPG game, but this one is set in the realm of Lord of the Rings, and that is Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. In Journeys in Middle-earth, you get to take on the role of one of the titular characters of the Lord of the Rings. So you got Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, Bilbo, and then Beravor, and a musician-type character that I don't quite remember if they definitely weren't in the movies or anything, but might have been in the books. I can't quite remember. But obviously they all play kind of the parts that you would associate with them in the movies and stories. Where Bilbo is kind of your roguelike character, Aragorn's your ranger, leader type character, Gimli is your, brute DPS force guy, Legolas is your range damage dude, and then Beravor and the musician class play up your support characters. Since this is an RPG and all the players are actually playing as characters in the game, it comes with an app that kind of directs the story, helps you understand what the different icons on the map are, and shows also like a cloud of war so that you're kind of exploring and building the map as you go, which I think is really awesome. You don't quite know what you're going to be going into except for maybe the first tile or two, and it really forces you to go to the different areas. And as soon as you get into one, obviously it broadens up the map, expands it, and usually in ways that you don't quite expect, or maybe all of a sudden you end up in a cave, which is kind of weird, but it also kind of makes caution and surprise as the story continues on. Each story also has a set start objective, and as you progress through the mission, obviously things change, as you're interacting with various tokens on the board. Enemies may appear, random areas of the map might be revealed, or, your objective also all of a sudden might change from following some footprints to finding a note that tells you there's a enemy encampment somewhere in the region that you need to start searching for. So I think, having that app and how the story progresses is really unique to this game, and also is really well themed for the Lord of the Rings genre. It's just really well done. And I think the big thing is that, the character class decks and the abilities that each character has are really finely tailored to fit the backstory and the lore of who those characters are in the stories. Obviously, again, this is similar to Star Wars Outer Rim, where although you are Bilbo, you don't necessarily have to play like the burglar class with him. You are able between missions to swap out the class you are playing, so you necessarily wouldn't have to play a burglar as Bilbo. You could make him your ranger. Obviously, this probably isn't as efficient as being the burglar, because obviously the character cards do synergize more effectively with the burglar class, or the class that's intended for that character. The game kind of revolves around doing skill checks for combat, for exploration, for interacting with tokens and people, or for trying to complete mission objectives that are like breaking a chain or clobbering down a door. So it's really well streamlined and has a good flow to the game. And every time I've played it, it's been a blast. It's one of those things where you have to clear out an afternoon, but you really don't mind because you get to hang out with, 4 other friends and kind of just dive into this world of Lord of the Rings. And there you have it. Lord of the Rings, Journeys to Middle-earth, another great RPG game if that's something you're looking for. Alright, and at number 22 I have Splendor. This is another one of the first board games I think Corey introduced to us, and I'm 90% sure Church actually bought Corey's version of Splendor. He liked it so much. So this has really been a big hit in our board game group. Splendor is another really good entry-level game. It's not overly complicated, and there's not a lot of flashy moving pieces to this, but it's a good, solid game. Essentially, all you're doing on each of those turns is that your options are that you can take 2 or 3 gems from the supply, or you can spend the gems that you do have to buy cards that then give you victory points or contribute to buying other cards. Obviously, this is kind of an engine building game, as you're buying these low-cost cards that don't really have a point value to them in order to make it easier to buy some of the more powerful cards and finally get to that layer of cards that are worth the most points at the end of the game. The overall objective of this game, I believe, is to get to 15 points. So obviously, creating that engine to make it the most efficient to get to that point before your opponents is really, really important. And I've seen people try to, brute force their way with just a few of the smaller cards and trying to get those big cards as soon as possible. Or you can try, just collecting a bunch of the very, base cards in order to have an easier time of buying those higher cards. It just depends on how long do you want to wait to make that move for your final end game scoring. One other mechanic that's really cool in this game is the ability on your turn to also reserve a card that's out on the play area. Reserving a card, just basically you take it from the play area, put it into your play area, and you don't quite own it yet, but you're basically preventing anyone else from buying that before you have the opportunity to do so. So if you really, really are, have been collecting gems in order to buy something, and you're kind of fearful based on what other people are doing that they might try to swoop in and steal that card from you, it's one way to mitigate that risk to continue going for the objectives that you're looking for. All in all, like I said before, Splendor is a really great entry-level game. It's fun even for, the more experienced gamers. It's just a good filler game for any occasion, and I've always had a blast playing it, and like I said, I think a lot of the nostalgia is there with this being one of the first games I ever played when getting into the board game hobby. And finally, at number 21, I have Betrayal at House on the Hill. This is another great game that got us into the board game hobby. I think not only is it a game that got our group into the board gaming hobby, outside of Corey obviously since he was already there, but I think it's also a game a lot of other people that fell into this hobby have also played as one of the first games they've ever tried. Betrayal at House on the Hill is kind of another RPG light, make your own story game where you're playing as one of 5 characters that have entered this haunted house. The first phase of the game entails, the characters exploring the various rooms, and what happens as you explore is the house kind of builds itself. So you have this pile of tiles that each one's associated with a various level of the house, be it the basement, the ground floor, or the upper level. And as you explore, you're drawing these tiles off the stack and orienting them onto the board however they fit, based on some general guidelines. And then each room also triggers like an event, holds an item, or has an omen. So omens are kind of what start to add up and lead to the triggering of the second phase. Omens are, I guess, kind of the mysterious acts that are occurring in the home as well as the events that are happening. And they really add a lot of flavor to the game. Like, some of the events are like spooky voices or just your character tripping out or getting scared. Now, as you're exploring these rooms, each room kind of contains 3 or 4 various things that can happen. So you might enter a room and there's an item you can collect, which then increases your player power or gives you something that maybe saves you down the line or can enhance the dice rolls or stats of your character. Another option is that you step into a room and an event triggers. And the events are pretty cool. They add a little bit of kind of chaos to the game or provide positive or negative boons to your character. Basically, a lot of them revolve around something mysterious happening in the house, or like a clue you might find that explains what's going on in this haunted mansion. But overall, I think they're pretty cool and fit into the game. Obviously, some are a little weird, like you might step into a room and all of a sudden there's a dumb waiter in the bedroom and it takes you to the basement, and it kind of breaks the immersion a little bit, but overall I think they fit pretty well. And most of the events cause a little bit of chaos and kind of create a little bit of tension that, sometimes if your character is getting low on health or mental ability, it kind of makes you hesitate from exploring a little bit because you never know what you're going to quite run into, and I think that's really cool. The second phase of this game triggers when you finally start getting enough omens that you perform this dice roll, and if the dice roll is less than the number of omens that have already been triggered, the haunt triggers. So once the haunt is triggered, the whole story evolves, and it's all based off of what room final omen was drawn from the deck. That kind of directs you where to go within the rulebook to determine who the traitor is and kind of what the overall story of the game you're playing is. And that's really something unique. Like, at the beginning of this game, you're doing one thing, and now all of a sudden it completely changes. 90% of the time, someone actually becomes the traitor and has it, they have to go upstairs or wherever, they have to leave the room. They're reading their own set of rules now on how to defeat the rest of the player characters that did not become the traitor, while the non-traitor characters sit down and figure out what their objective is to eliminate this haunt or escape the home before time runs out. Every time I've played this game, I've never had the same haunt come up twice, and each haunt has so far been pretty cool and made a pretty good story. Sometimes the objectives can be a little unclear or confusing, but for the most part, it's like something happens and now you have haunted dolls running around trying to murder all of you, and the player characters are trying to find a way to destroy the dolls and escape the home before dolls multiply and murder everyone. It's a really fun story-based game. It's simple. It mostly revolves around rolling dice, exploring the house, and using your items efficiently in order to complete your objectives. If you're a fan of story-based games or just RPGs in general, this is definitely a game I think would be for you, and is a reason why it's in my top 30 games. And there you have it. There's the next 5 games in my top 30. And if you have any comments on my games, or if there are things you enjoy, let me know in the comments down below. Be happy to hear all about your experiences with any of these. And hope to see you again next time as we continue to climb up my top 30 games of all time. Thanks.